Hello and welcome back for the part 3 and final installment of my Stationery Styling Series. If you have not seen the other 2 videos yet, I've gone ahead and linked them below. They talk about props for styling as well as general lighting setup for styling in terms of what's the best. So if you want to take a quick look at those 2 before watching this one, you can definitely do that. Or if you feel like you have a good handle on your props and lighting already, then feel free to watch this one because I'm going to talk about styling your paper goods in the best way possible. Quick disclaimer, all the styling in this video is going to be horizontal instead of vertical because obviously horizontal works a little bit better for filming. It would be a little tricky for me to film a vertical surface. I will try to offer tips for that if I can, but otherwise I'm just going to stick with working on this horizontal plane right here and moving these paper pieces around to give you a good idea of what you should do and shouldn't do when you're styling your stationery and your wedding invitation pieces. Close at hand, I have my Honey Silks & Co. ribbon. All the ribbon here is from Honey Silks & Co. I have these gorgeous styling dishes from Marbella Dish. And then I also have some florals from Golden Bloom that I'll be pulling in here as well to show you how to add some extra flowers and greenery to your styling as well. I should also note that these styling goods, all of these pieces right here, were just created by hand for the purpose of a shoot, and I am now using it for this video to demonstrate styling. If you have a normal invitation suite though that has the 3 pieces, the invite, detail card, and RSVP, as well as your 2 envelopes, RSVP envelope and invitation envelope, then you should still be able to use these techniques just as well when you're styling. I've now moved all of our props out of the way to the sides here so that we can go ahead and start talking about the paper pieces specifically. Before going into good tips for styling paper, I want to touch really quick on some things that you should avoid when styling. First and foremost, I've seen this done a couple times where pieces are simply laid out something like this. I'm going to go ahead and try to do this best I can here. This is probably a better example. All right, either like this or like this. And that's fine. I say fine lightly because what's happened here is I haven't given this suite very much of a dynamic feel at all. Even if I were to put this here, it just still seems super stiff because all the pieces are perfectly square with one another. And if this invitation was a white paper similar to this one, then we'd be in even more trouble because what we would have here is just an undynamic setup for our paper pieces. Even if we were to put some props here and put some props here, we haven't done anything to showcase the work in a really beautiful way. And not to mention the invitation, which should be kind of the heart of your styling and the center of your styling, is just kind of like stuck on the corner here. And it's hard to see the appeal to the suite as a whole when it's stiffly styled in a sense. Believe it or not, another common mistake I've seen is pieces just being placed down and not put in line with one another. So the first shot would actually be preferable in a sense because at least everything would have been straightened and dead on with one another. But I have seen pieces just put down and then photographed with some props put here and there. And to me, that just kind of signifies that there wasn't much thought put into the shot in styling it. Or sometimes you'll see people like layer the pieces, which if done correctly with a lot of thought, that might work for you. But if you're trying to showcase a suite as a whole, it's probably not the best option because then we end up having certain elements that are covered and not seen. overall, just try to avoid either styling it too stiffly or styling it too loosely. What we want is to have a happy medium, so that's what I'm kind of going to show you, because you kind of need to move things around and tweak them a bit. It's a little bit of a puzzle to try to get a nice and pretty setup that will be good for styling. And something else that I will mention is if you have little place cards or little additional cards that you can use when styling, I purposely made these with just some floral illustrations on them. Then you can add those into the styling as well to help balance if there are any empty areas, especially because these guys are little. They count as almost an additional prop in a way, even though not every invitation suite that you style, especially if it's one for an actual wedding, is going to have pieces like this. That's why your props really take a big hand in styling. Alright, so I've picked up all of the pieces again, except for my invitation. And that's because the invitation of any suite is the heart and the soul of the suite. It is the main piece and therefore should most likely be the center. We shouldn't have it out of the way over here. It shouldn't be stuck out of the way over here. We want it to try to be right in the middle because it really is the center of attention in a suite. So I have these other elements here. And what I really like to do is I like to try to find an element with a little bit of white space. This envelope is probably going to be the best bet because up here where the stamps would be, it is currently empty. And you could obviously use stamps in your styling if you want to, but not everyone always has those on hand. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is something like this. So this is really simple. This is kind of the basic layout for the puzzle. I like having elements in a suite that are touching one another, especially when we can layer it without hiding any details, which is why I've put these pieces together. So we have the center of the wedding suite, the invitation, paired with its brother or sister, which is the addressed envelope that it would go into. So those two elements go together really nicely, and if you can use that in your styling, it's definitely a good option. We also have an RSVP envelope with an RSVP card. Sometimes, actually most of the time, an RSVP card is going to be horizontal instead of vertical, so that's something you'll have to take into consideration when you are styling with a horizontal RSVP card. But since I did make this one in the vertical orientation, I'm going to go ahead and use it that way. So if I put this here, that fills in the puzzle nicely, but it almost fits too perfectly because now we've squared off this edge up here. So what I would rather do is take a different piece, maybe this envelope, because this already gives it so much more of a dynamic feel because it comes over the side here. We haven't squared off the suite in any way, and it just gives it an additional little bit of life. And obviously be careful to make sure that you're not putting it like this, you're not putting it like this, you're squaring off the corners of the suite when they do meet in the middle. That is something that gets overlooked a lot, and it's something that's really easy to spot once the suite is photographed, whether or not the pieces have been set square with one another. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my details card and my RSVP card, and I think I like the look of it best if it's coming in down here. So I'm going to go ahead and move these things up a little bit so that we can see that alright. Alright, so I'm going to set the details card here because once again, the pieces are even, but we haven't squared anything off. And then our RSVP card fits really beautifully in this spot. Even though our invitation has shifted up slightly within the styling piece, I would say it is still the center of attention because it overlaps this envelope right here and it really still makes a nice statement. So, if I were to be using these, I could place this one down here, And I would maybe place the other one over here, because then your suite becomes even more dynamic. So all of your pieces are flowing together well, and then kind of extending and spreading out. And I hope all of this is kind of making sense. You also need to remember that the RSVP card doesn't necessarily have to go right by the RSVP envelope, and this envelope doesn't have to go right by the invitation. However, like I said, I consider these pieces to be the brother and the sister of the suite, so I tend to keep them close to one another. All right, now that I have my invitation suite in place, that is always what you want to do first, is do the invitation suite first. Now I can go back in and start playing with the placement of my props to see where things are going to fit the best. So I have this ribbon out here from Honey Silks & Co. that's really lovely. I made sure to pull colors that kind of go directly with the suite. We're kind of in the blue, gray, pink range here. So this one would be really pretty. I could angle it a little bit like that if I wanted to. Sorry, I think that got hidden from view. We could have the ribbon coming over down here if we wanted, and then this card could go over the ribbon. The ribbon is great because it's so flowy that it has an additional fun and romantic element to styling your suites. It is, however, the hardest element to style because it's hard to get it to fall in a way that you like. So you're going to probably find yourself going like this repeatedly, trying to find a good way to style your ribbon with the suite. That I like for the most part. We have some like good movement and good flow. I'll go ahead and set this one to the side. And then there's this guy too that complements this suite so beautifully. And if I play around with it, I can make it go through the suite like this. But then what I have to remember to do is that I'm going to pick up this piece and kind of tuck it underneath. So it's all about moving things around in the best way possible. And then you can square off your elements again. I would probably remove this little card up here. Let's see. So yeah, that's pretty. I'd actually probably want to flip this upon second thought. I would roll my ribbon a little differently. The ribbon, if anything, is one of the first things that you could lie down if you wanted, but I like getting a good feel on the invitation suite first before adding other elements. That is just me personally. That might be a little too much. It might be able to go down here. If you are taking a horizontal photo though, you just want to make sure that your elements are all going to be seen within the range of your shot. Okay, and this ribbon, I love the color. It might actually be a little too thick because it is dominating the suite, but at least I have it out here kind of for an example for all of you. I actually went ahead and removed that blue ribbon off over to the side and put in the pink ribbon instead because it's a little thinner and not quite as dominating as the blue one was. So this really takes, more than anything, a lot of tweaking to figure out what fits best and what doesn't work. So if I wanted to incorporate a ring dish, which honestly, both of these options are going to be stunning with this suite, I could maybe place it up here because this space is feeling a little empty, or I could even place it off to the side here as well, which I think I might like it a little better on the side. I don't have any jewelry except my own wedding ring to show you within this bowl, so I'm going to go ahead and just leave it as is, but obviously most of the time you would have a wedding ring or some piece of jewelry in here. And then I'm feeling like this part up here on the top is still a little bit empty. So there's a couple of solutions. First of all, I'm probably not going to use these, For how romantic this suite is, those feel a little bit too modern for me. So that's something to always be conscious of. I can use these because the nibs are so like antique and romantic. Create the little spilling nibs look. If you think that's cute, that adds a little bit more of a movement to the suite. Could even make it look like they're actually coming directly out of the glass jar. The trickiest thing about styling is, like, to be entirely honest, you're trying to make this look like a happy accidental mess. Not a mess, that's not the right word. You're trying to make it, yeah, I'm just gonna stick with mess because I don't know how else to say it. You're trying to make everything look happily accidental when really there is a lot of thought that goes into where each piece is going. Styling in itself is kind of just an art, essentially. So just keep in mind that it does take a lot of time and a lot of tweaking and playing around with. I would most likely not use a ring box, even though I really, really like it. First of all, this is green. Doesn't match the rest of the suite very well. Just using it as an example. I love how it squares it off, but if we're gonna have a ring dish, I'm not sure why you would use a ring box as well. So that is definitely something to consider. And I also have my wax seal here, which might actually be a really pretty fit up here. And it is. It balances off the suite really, really nicely. I could even pull in my example wax seal if I wanted to put it somewhere on the suite. Sometimes you'll have an envelope just flipped over on the back with the seal on it. And that's another additional fun layer to have when you are styling. But then it does complicate it even more because there's even more moving pieces. Okay, so it could go like this. I think I like it without. I'm going to leave it like that. And last but not least, it's always fun to try to incorporate some natural elements if you can. Not everyone has access to fresh flowers though, so that's not always possible. But Golden Bloom was nice enough to provide flowers for this series. So this gives it even more of just like a natural and pretty feel. It's so romantic. I might switch this around a little bit to play with the movement of the suite. Maybe it's kind of coming out like that. These flowers don't have to be right next to each other. They could be in completely different spots if you wanted them to be. Let's see, I'll pull these out to the side a little bit. All of these things are my extra props. And then we have the suite here in the middle. Let's remove this as well, as far as we can. Okay, so there you have it. The suite kind of put together and styled, really romantic. Keep it simple. It's best to not overdo the amount of props you have if you're trying to keep focus on the suite. That might change depending on the reasons that you're styling, because maybe you're styling to showcase a jewelry dish, or maybe you're styling to showcase the ribbon. And in that instance, it would probably change a little bit. Let's see how this looks down here, if there's more balance. I don't know, I like it both ways. A couple final notes real quick. Obviously this is one of the many ways that this suite could be styled. If I wanted to, the details card could go in this corner and the RSVP envelope could come down in this corner. And things would just have to shift and move around a little bit. But as long as we're keeping the suite nice and tight and together and cohesive, that's what really matters. We don't want pieces to be placed individually as if they don't have any purpose, because they're all brothers and sisters and part of one suite. So to wrap up this series, I want to say that stationery is so much fun to style and to play with, and wedding invitations are so much fun because the possibilities are endless. But there are little rules and little guidelines to kind of follow when you're styling them to make sure that it overall has a great look to it, because you really want to showcase the pieces and especially the time and effort that was put into them. So, as I wrap this up, one more quick shout out to my amazing sponsors. We have Honey Silks & Co. with all the gorgeous ribbon. We have Marbella Dish with these beautiful styling and jewelry dishes. And we have Gold and Bloom that provided the natural floral elements for us. If you have any questions or comments for me, please feel free to leave them below. I try to be really good about answering people. And feel free to reach out to me on Instagram as well, because that's where I'm doing most of my styling work and talking a little more about styled shoots and things like that. You can find me at Eliza and Calligraphy. And make sure to like this video and subscribe if you enjoy watching my videos and listening to the tips and tricks that I give all of you. I hope that the rest of your day is wonderful, and good luck styling your stationery and wedding invitation suites. I cannot wait to see what all of you come up with.